the Otways National Park, folks. So the national park that we're in here stretches for a huge portion of the coastline. So basically started about 15 minutes after we left Lockhart Gorge, comes all the way through, and it will finish out past the town of Lorne. So we go to National Park and State Park, but it's basically all there to protect our beautiful forests like this one. So it sits up just away from the coastline, all the towns down on the water that we'll pass through. National Park sits up just behind that. But this means we have a cooler climate, but we still have the really high rainfall that we need to be able to classify it as a rainforest. But it does mean that we can get these big beauties up here behind me.
Ash.
And they are the second tallest growing trees in the world. So they grow on average up to about 100 metres tall. The only ones that grow any taller are your Californian redwoods over in the States.
What a beautiful stand of, oh, but these are Australian tree ferns. A dense grove in here of tree ferns. Really quite stunning.
Have a look at here, guys. First one is the one behind me here. So these are called Myrtle Beach, these ones. Pretty awesome trees they are. Little tiny leaves on them, you can see just here. However, they don't all grow quite as interestingly as this one here has. So what's happened here is a tree has fallen over. From the size of the logs and everything around here, I'm pretty much going to say that it was one of the mountain ash trees. And when that log has started to rot, a seed from the Myrtle Beach has landed on top of it and then started to grow. So instead of being able to send its roots straight down into the soil like a normal tree would, it's had to send them out and around the outside of that fallen log and start to grow from there. So the Myrtle Beach has slowly grown, that log through the middle has slowly rotted, and this is how we get left with these big arch shapes in the roots. So there's about a quarter of that log still in the centre there, and that will eventually rot away till nothing.
Soft tree ferns.
We have a few different varieties of tree ferns here in Australia, but the ones we have here are the soft variety. Feel free to touch them. The reason we call them soft is because they basically are. They're kind of furry and spongy and stringy. They're strange little things. But the reason for that is all those stringy bits around the outside of the trunks, and those are its roots. So it doesn't have a huge root system underneath the soil. There's just enough to hold it upright. But then it'll keep all the roots around the outside of the trunk so it can get its water really, really quickly here. So that's all they grow per year. It's probably just a little bit under 3 metres tall. It's going to make it approximately 150 years old, which is pretty cool. 150 to 300 years old. Pretty awesome. So we can tell roughly how old these ones are by how high they are. So 2 centimetres per year, makes it pretty easy. When it comes to the myrtle beeches or the mountain ash trees, we really can't be exactly certain how tall they are by how old they are. It's got to do with how well they grow each season. So some years they'll grow really, really fast and they'll shoot up really high. Some other seasons they'll barely grow at all. So the only way we can actually tell how old the myrtle beech or the mountain ash are would be to chop it down and actually count each of the growth rings inside the trunk. We're not going to be doing that.
This one is hollowed out. You can see all the roots from the new tree.
Just like we saw before, big gaps in the roots. Only this one's quite a bit bigger. This one has had that centre log rot completely away. Nothing left in there now, so nice and hollow all the way through. It does make for a fantastic photo around the other side there.
Well, here's another giant myrtle tree. Here's the top of that tree that I was standing in front of a few minutes ago. Way up there. Mountain ash, which is a Eucalyptus regnans, like those in this forest, can grow over 100 meters, making them the tallest flowering plants in the world. They're constantly shed from their giant trunks to help enrich the forest floor and soils. This bark is part of the 40 tons of organic litter that accumulate per hectare per year in these forests.
Gone around big cliffs dropping off into the ocean, and now we have big lovely stretches of beaches, and further around the coast we get, the better the surf conditions become. So it's pretty easy to name it the surf coast, that shallow. Compared to the open ocean, it is rather shallow because this whole area out to the right hand side here used to be above water. It was land many thousands of years ago, and then the earth does what the earth does well, and that is change. And some areas rose up, some areas sunk down, and that is what's happened out here to our right hand side. It slowly sunk down, was flooded over by the ocean, and left us with this very wide but quite shallow section of water. Now we're going to have some amazing views across the water as we come around. They're part of the group of animals known as marsupials, and basically what all this sort of boils down to means that they have a pouch for their baby to live in. So it's the same as kangaroos have pouches, same with koalas, little pouch for their baby to live in, and also like the kangaroos, we call a little baby koala a joey, little baby joey koala. Very cute. When they're first born, those joeys are tiny. They're only about the size of your fingernail. Now, at that point, they don't have any of their fur, their eyes are still closed, and they basically just look like a little pink jelly bean with arms and legs. That's about it. Now, what they do is they climb up their mother's stomachs and into her pouch, and they'll live there for the first few months of their lives. So they'll drink her milk, they'll grow bigger and stronger, they'll get their fur, they'll open their eyes, and when they become too big to ride around in their mother's pouch anymore, they'll hang on to either her stomach or her back as she climbs around. Now, I told you guys before about our koalas and how they eat eucalyptus leaves. Only 10 varieties out of our 800 they eat, and the ones that we have around here are called manna gums. They think that they're pretty tasty. But the thing about the eucalyptus leaves is that although the adults can eat them, the babies cannot. If a little joey koala was to go and grab a handful of leaves and start chewing, it could actually poison itself, make itself very sick, or in the worst case scenario, it could even die from it, which seems very strange, seeing as the adults eat them quite happily. But the reason for that is that eucalyptus leaves have a lot of poisons and toxins in them. Now, what has to happen is the mother actually has to teach the joey how to eat these leaves and process those poisons out of them. And the way that she goes about this is both very smart and very disgusting all at the same time. When the baby is around about sort of 5 months old, the mother will stop producing just milk for the baby and start producing a new mixture. And what this is a combination of her milk and of her poo, so her feces. But it's actually exactly what the little baby needs. So the milk part of it is something that they're used to eating. It's got all the nutrients and everything that they need. And what the poo adds to it is these tiny traces of the poisons. So what has happened is the poo is nothing but digested eucalyptus leaves. It's gone through the mother's system, and she has removed most of the poisons and toxins from those leaves, and there's now only tiny traces of them left. So this mixture gets fed to the baby, and that they'll get those small amounts of poisons into their system, and instead of hurting it, it can actually learn from them. So slowly but surely, they'll build up a tolerance to those small amounts of it, and eventually they'll become completely immune, and they will be able to go and eat the leaves straight off the tree without having any problems come to them. And I think is absolutely fantastic. And what it is that koalas are the only other known animal, apart from humans, to have fingerprints. I think it's That's awesome. Koalas have fingerprints.